Colin, welcome back to the main stage of Madame Lenormand's Drag Race All Stars season 151.
It's good to be back. I'm beating out Jujubee for like
Yeah.
most reappearances at this point, so it's legit. We're getting there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in true All Stars fashion, we have not booked a hall. We are simply in studio for a momentous day, for a finale in a real sense, which is the fucking cards. They exist now and they're in our enormous little drag hands. So how are you feeling? I mean, you got yours a few days earlier. I got mine, what's today? Saturday morning. So I got mine Thursday. How are you feeling? You got yours like a day and a half before that.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have your 36 Bambini in the world?
So at first we were talking in the chat on Telegram about how it was like Christmas, so I like got it. I was like, oh, exciting, and I opened them, and it was much like Christmas. It was that kind of feeling of something. Oh, the anticipation, and now it's just the actuality, and it was like, oh, okay, that's the end of this. And so there was like maybe like a It was like there were like a half a day of that, and then I kind of started, fondling with the cards later that night, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is pretty cool." It was pretty cool to have the thing that we've been talking about and working on for the best part of 2 years, to sort of finally have it and use it as like an operating fortune telling deck. So yeah, it was
I know.
once I opened the PlayStation and got used to the idea that I had a PlayStation, it was it was all such a joy.
Yeah, and before we begin the actual unboxing, I want to thank James for this, the third person in the marriage, because I mean, I lucked out with James anyway, but his background is actually like back in New Zealand, he was in charge of Disney licensing, which is to say making Disney branded crap in China for New Zealand's largest retailer. So, and with his retail skills in general, in the sense of retail operational skills, we would have been quite fucked had it been left to our devices to get this out and to have it good. So it's all well and good to write a book and paint some little pictures, which is all we did. It was very easy, no effort
Oh, yeah,
required at all.
totally.
Yeah, it was amazing to see the challenges that he had to, like the operational real world challenges of a world careening into or spinning out of control into World War III. Planning this process through lockdown induced bottlenecks and injection damage from people who are supposed to be helping us but in Hong Kong. And at the beginning of this project, I had as one of its goals, like I need to make a fortune telling deck of and for these times. And we did that, and we would not have done that. It literally has the apocalypse stank on it, thanks to James. And the reason I mentioned that is he said unboxing a PlayStation. One of the things I'm particularly happy about is him being able to realize that conceptual design of the long list of people who could potentially sue us for playing fast and loose with intellectual property. One of them is Apple.
Mm.
I mean, not really. They just pioneered a design type. But one of the things I absolutely wanted for the deck was a box that, I could see the screen in the background, but you get the idea, because this one, I've kept the shrink wrap on, but it looks
Oh, it's so
Apple-y.
cool. Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Like, this is exactly what's good about selling a deck directly is, I mean, it's got the legal stuff on the back, what it's called and so on. But what's good about selling a deck directly is this gets into that peak, which is very important to us, I suppose, like peak graphic novel era. You used to be able to buy like an absolute something shrink wrapped
Yeah.
looking like this with the confidence of just, you know what this is, and the confidence of being able to deliver it. Now, no one actually does know what this is, but that's beside the point. The point is, this was like absolutely teeming with the theme of how I wanted the final product to be, how I wanted it to arrive delivered by Owl in people's lives. So that first moment of drama, again, was my idea. It was your design. James fulfilled it. When the
Well,
boxes showed up, I'm like, oh my God.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was really like the black, the sort of plain, the sort of Apple kind of thing was really, it was like kind of your idea because I was like, I think by that point, I was just like, I don't think I have it in me to do this. I'm like, I think this is the limit for me. And just like looking at the sort of box layout and the maths and the dimensions of it, I was like, I don't think I've got this. I don't think the battery is like completely so, and it looks so gorgeous and it's
Yeah.
so simple. And I love it. I keep kind of picking them up and just sort of walking around
Yeah,
with
exactly.
them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, same. Now, obviously, that one is shrink wrapped because I was pretending I was going to open it live, but then we didn't end up doing it live because of the internet. So I'm going to leave that one shrink wrapped in the grand tradition of gross nerds keeping things in pristine condition because I have one that's already open. And in fact, if I without the shrink wrap one, you even get more. First of all,
Yeah.
my gay little fingerprints, but you actually get more of like what we were talking about with the box, which you then open and boom. So I'm working on my next book now, and that will be out early next year. I thought this book, well, I wrote this book last year. So I effectively am still writing a book a year, which I feel great about because, as I've said from the beginning for people watching it, this is a proper book. This is my fortune telling. So obviously, we have the card stuff that you would expect from a little white book. But actually, most of it is like fortune telling tech. Because one of the magical conceits I wanted for the project was let this be the one deck, or at least the one book that you read that will unpack every and any cartomantic system possible. So that if you read this book, my promise at the beginning, no refunds, is you will be able to pick up any deck of playing cards or what have you and start to read fortunes with it. And that's in the spirit of Madame Lenormand herself, because there's a biography in there and there's a moment in her childhood where she was first exposed to tarot cards and was in Paris and really, really wanted a set and couldn't afford it because she was she was actually working in sales in a clothing shop, basically, just to make her gayer than she even is. And she bought herself some playing cards instead because she couldn't afford the tarot cards. And she would have been about 16, I would say, at this point. And I just find that story like this orphan little girl alone in Paris, not being able to afford something that had so impressed her, but like not giving up. Like, no, fuck this. Well, I guess I'm gonna do this with playing cards. So that was one of the Lenormand spirits or Lenormand threads that I wanted through the project, which is that like that moment in her life, because then by the time she died, she was rich. She ran her own publishing company. She'd been in prison multiple times. She could afford whatever decks of cards she wanted. So, but that's like the actual beginning of her cartomantic journey that ends in these cards, which I have a logic around this that everyone's, oh, but you didn't make the Lenormand cards. That no, no, no. Only someone like her could arrange a deck of cards with her name on it from beyond the grave. This is the type of woman you're dealing with. That's how you want to understand the lineage backwards. And we do that as a magical spell in the book. So for people looking for a fortune telling book, that's in there, and you get some cards in a Apple and Bizarro World box to go along with it.
Yeah, I got the sort of the electronic document, the preview of the book, and I was like, "This is so good." This is because you were saying like, "Oh, it's gonna be a real book." And I was like, "Okay, it's gonna be like a novella or whatever." And it's like the it's so interesting, and everything is just so on point, and it's really good. It's fabulous. I didn't even get to. I'm rereading it now as a physical copy because books hit different when they're on the physical.
I
And
do. Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. It was so much fun to write because it captured the energy of the show that we did over the creation of the cards, the drag references, game within a game is in there. And so like we could almost, again, just because I assume Mama Ru is more litigious than some of the people that we've played fast and loose with. And she is in fact in there. But I wanted that energy. I wanted this to be my gay little book, right? There's a different persona that has to write something, let's say, occultishly important, like a Scarlet Imprint book, to like tap, tap, tap. Here are my takes on fortune telling. And I had to operate, and that literally is inspired by Lenormand herself, because when the the moral brigade in Paris was trying to and succeeded in having her books taken off shelves and banned at the level of the publisher. She used her money to buy her own fucking publishing company and printed her own fucking books. Like, she was not to be fucked with, right? And so that idea of like, no, nothing will stop my takes, nothing, is a lesson for our times. And I really enjoyed that's in there. That fun and caprice is what I was after, I think.
Nice. Yeah, she's like the
Yeah,
original drag performer, really, or one of the original drag performers.
basically. She belongs in the lineage, yeah. So we go through the cards.
Mm.
I've been shuffling and using mine. Oh my god, being able to so yesterday I told my first fortune using these cards, and it worked. And, like, I've been reading with Lenormand for years, obviously, but it was something like, "This better actually work," and it did. And it did on exactly the levels that is talked about in the book. Very Camellia inspired, Camellia Alliance, that is. So what's on the cards, what's associated with them in the story of Lenormand, and what's associated with them in the cinematic universe that is a term I invented that the cards come out of. And it worked. It actually, I mean, it's such a weird thing to say. I have a couple of friends who created tarot card decks, and I have to ask them, like, were you a little scared the first time you threw down some cards that it would actually work? What did you've actually told a fortune or two with them yet?
Yeah, I was actually doing it today. So I'm working at a gallery, and I was like, "Does anyone want a fortune told?" Like, I was like desperate. I'd done it for myself personally, and I was like, "All right, let's unleash this." And it was really good. It worked. Yeah. So because it's artwork that I've done, there's a lot of, I thought the process of sort of dis like, sort of separating from it would be longer, but I was like, just immediately like, "Oh no, this works. This is fine. This is great. This is living and doing, and let's have it." And I read those bitches to filth. So
Excellent, excellent, excellent. No, it's wonderful. I just think it's yeah. I know what you mean. Like, am I too involved in the project so that if someone has a simple question, are you going to get too in the weeds of like, well, actually, that's a bisexual icon who has stolen that baby. Like, are you gonna get into, like, too much detail when I say, "Bitch, I just wanted to know if I wanna go to Ibiza or Rome for my holiday," and
you're
you've
like,
just come at me with, like, time traveling dogs, and he's like, "Look."
like, are you?
Yeah, but
Are
no,
you?
I managed to keep my mouth shut. Yeah.
I think I did ask that question. Like, are you familiar with Michelle Gomez? So there is someone like that's so watch out, because she could be in these streets over here. So that is something that is very much like this might actually be Michelle Gomez, like in the city centre of Glasgow. We're just kind of knocking about. Just be aware of her.
It's like, you got in a fight with a woman at a crossroads, probably a pedestrian crossing, and it's like, "Yeah, Michelle Gomez pushed me." Yeah. You could actually have it literally her.
But yeah, like it's so yeah, it's and it yeah, and yeah, it's just okay. I was kind of I had my no, I was like slightly bummed out that it was going to be the smaller size, like playing card size. There she is, but it's so perfect and everything reads so well. You can see like the insets, like all the characters. You can see the basics of the work, or the basics of the work. It just it all come like I think that we took so much time over this. Also, kind of is
Yeah.
like yeah, that all works perfectly. It's perfect for the size. We're basically scientists. Like this is amazing.
That's I would say the same. I would say this is but, like, there's a hashtag, unfortunately, but it's, build in public for people who are making apps and, like, AI shit. We did that. We did that with fortune telling, and from I'm just gonna show the because I'm as you say, like, it's we spent so much time at the very beginning going, "Well, what is this?" And it needs to be, again, for that powerful moment of fortune telling, playing cards, tarot. It's like a timeline split moment when that happened to Lenormand. So the cards need to speak at that level, right? And you hold them and go, it's an unusual here's I got some tarot cards near me. I love this deck, by the way. This is absolutely no shade. Anything with a Matthews on it is a good deck, but
Yeah.
playing cards tarot, right? And so right away, like if you're in the gallery reading for people, it already looks like a project. It already looks like a performance because it's playing card sized. So right away, you've moved people from the Trump hands giant card divination oracle thing into that caprice, right? So I'm so happy with it. I'm so happy with the size of them and the matte color
Yeah.
and the fact that it looks like it's from a dimension you vaguely remember from a dream, which is what we wanted. It's like these look like playing cards or these look like fortune telling cards, but there's something skew with, right? They're from that hyperdimensional paddleboat casino that you learn about in the cards themselves. So from the very beginning, they are a spell of performance that I'm so excited by. And this is even before we get to the butt and all the other bizarre crap that we ended up going with. Oh, here we go. The Rider, where we all began. And we should spend some time talking about this one because I might actually include below this video. Maybe not. Maybe it's because this is the first one. This is the one that's gone through the most drag evolutions, right? The drag has elevated the most for Marie-Louise from our beginning concept, which lasted all of 2 or 3 cards, up to where we went. So other than House, Colin, which actually I'll show next, what are your thoughts on the Rider now? How fondly do you remember they, them?
Yeah, I was going through files and sort of like the very initial kind of concepts. And it was like black and white. It was very like illustrative and like cartoony. So it's really like I am not joking when I say we have like each card has probably gone through this one perhaps the most actually because it was the first kind of 10. But this one has probably gone through like 6 iterations to get here, and it's so cool, and it looks so good. And even this one, oddly enough, is one of the ones that kind of got finished last because it was like once you get to the end of the deck, you kind of want to polish off the beginning ones with the kind of same thing. But it looks so cool. I'm just gonna keep saying that. It looks so cool. Like I'm gonna blow my own goddamn drop.
It yeah. Such a fascinating one to start with because I want to read from the beginning of the Rider. The difference between the Rider and the Fool tells you a lot about the difference between Lenormand and Tarot. Like a James Bond film, we open on the action, whereas a tarot deck begins with a hobo having his genitals attacked by a dog. Norman begins with a dashing stranger riding up with exciting news about urgent reinforcements to turn the tide of war, a messenger in advance of big changes. So it's action from the very word go. And I'm glad we started there. Like I got to understand from a creative perspective the difference between, because this was the card we began with. I had to find a local story, which I did. They, them, the non-binary icon, historical icon that is the Rider in this card. And we went, it's interesting because we should talk about things briefly, things like gender. Even before the project began, we had some takes that were not good about the man and woman card should be hermaphrodites. There should just be one card. And I say, well, how does that work then if you're trying to do polarities and so on? And it's not in keeping with the spirit of the age of where the cards came from. But we had to speak to the spirit of the age in which they're going to be used. And traditionally, the Rider is often associated with the extra marital lover, typically younger and typically male, but not necessarily. And I know like out and out lesbians who will go have like woman and Rider as the couple cards. As long as you agree beforehand what it's going to be, then
Yeah.
we had to play with that. And so we made the Rider the first woman to ever fight a duel in La Chorita, Tasmania, who basically was dressed as a man and pretended to be a scientist all the way from Paris to Tasmania, and some of her crewmates were insisting that she was a woman, and she was insisting she was a man to the point where she's like, "I will fucking fight you." And we don't know if she won the duel, but she did survive it. So like, she probably won the fucking duel, right?
Yeah,
So that's
that's all been
so yeah, it might have been a double shante, but she at least got the shante, right? And that's the energy you want from the Rider card. I guess the other card that I think up and about, mostly because I'm super happy with how it turned out, is the bane of your life, the
God.
Aquarius stellium trap of traps, the house. Let me
No, damn. Yeah,
this, I mean,
there,
think
yeah.
about it. This card is the one that you did the most, right? The
It
most
would
work on, and the
actually,
one that sent you to the sanitarium more times than any of the other ones, right? You might even say 40% of the whole project
yeah.
was you working on. How do you feel about
And
it
I was
now?
like,
Out
I
of
was looking
10.
at it. I actually drew it in a reading earlier today, and I didn't even flinch when it came out. I was like, "Oh, okay, there it is." It was, so when I'm working on these, or when I was working on these, obviously I can see the full size, and it's like every detail. I can see like everything. And now I'm just like, no, this all compresses and looks like it really works well, and like the lay and yeah. So now I'm just like, yeah, this is a house card. Like, bitch, this is a house card.
Yeah. It's ended up everything I wanted out of a dream home, right? Because it's got the exact blend of Rivendell and Andean architecture that we want. People can't tell from this side because we went isometric, we went all over the shop with this,
Oh, oh,
but there is
thank
a
God,
lovely
yeah,
little
remember that.
permaculture garden in the background. It's on the, I think, Urubamba River. I can't remember what we settled on there. So it's Riverside, it's Rivendell, it's Andean. It's like this is where I live in my heart, right? Which is amusing because that's the next card. We're sort of playing Colin, this is your fucking life with the deck. And so I'm glad. So which card is the house the one that you're like, oh, am I triggered? The one that you're most triggered by when it shows up in a reading, which is the one where it's like, no, it's okay. I don't have to draw it anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't flinch any like, I got it, and I didn't flinch. I was like, "I'm at peace with this now, like, this makes sense." Now that it's out there, it's out of my head and on the card, it's beautiful, and we're friends now, and I look at it and think, "Oh, that's cute."
Right,
Would
jumping
never
to the
never
next
went like,
line.
this is the one. This is possibly one of my favorites, I think.
Right?
Shouldn't one
Yeah.
really should have favorites amongst one's children, but
No, I think the lighting and the printing, which we didn't really, I mean, we knew how we were going to print it, but we didn't quite know what it was going to look like. The lighting and the printing came together on the heart card to such a pleasing amount that I just think it looks fantastic, right? I just think it looks even down to the inset, the energy of the inset, the energy of the person who definitely does not exist and is absolutely not an actor in the recent Star Wars films is amazing. Like I just think it gets the complexity of the heart, I suppose, right? Like it gets everything about it, but it's not where we began. Like this is the one that I found.
no.
It's another fun card. So one of the things creating the deck I wanted to do during and into an apocalypse, and I kind of wanted it to be some sort of Molotov cocktail thrown at the apocalypse we're in, was my like heart healing crisis that began and ended through the building of this deck. And I had one of the weirdest synchronicities of visiting a cardiologist the week we were working on the heart card. And that was fucking weird. So I had this lengthy heart journey that I had to go through during the creation of the deck. And to some extent, so did you, just differently, because we began in a really different place. And it's weird that like the heart knows what it wants. And what it wanted was more of this Marlon Brando, Jean-Paul Gaultier, but it's like a classic heart tattoo, except riddled with magic. So we get the sacred heart, we get the heart chakra, we get all of it, and we get it in that wearing the heart on the sleeve. I think it's one of my favorites too, which I was not expecting. I was thinking like, God, honestly, the house and the heart are some of my favorite cards. And they were the ones where I'm like, let's just get this deck out. you know, let's
Yeah, these are the ones. It's like they take so long to kind of get it out and in good shape, where like we're happy with it and we're comfortable putting it in other people's hands. And then you're like, is this good, or is it just finished? But then you're like this.
It is. It's really good. It's really good indeed. We've sort of gone out of order, so I just want to show some more of them for people. So the ship, that's Hobart in the background, and again, that was early on, and that was still when we were trapped in this country. And so this card has a lot of energy for me. But It's got everything we wanted, and big thanks to Nathan, for instance, talking us through some of insisting that we have the stars reflect in the ocean, because obviously the ship is the ship card, but we wanted that to be a spiritual, UFO, hermetic, and so on, as above, so below, little wink at Pirates of the Caribbean 4, all the rest of it. So I'm quite happy with that one as well. But it's one that I knew I was going to like, because that's kind of one of like my cards, if you will, in any Lenormand deck. I carry the ship energy. And speaking of my cards, we should talk about the butt.
We really should, because I had to trigger warn in this. I was like, by the way, there is a full bare ass in this deck when I was like doing readings today. Like there is a full bare ass. Everyone was cool. Everyone was like queer or whatever. And they're like, yeah, bring it on. It's the weekend. But
it's also, we've also got a titty
yeah,
card we'll get to, right?
The what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We've
right.
also got a titty card. We've got TNA. How else would we, what other deck would we do? We should get it to Jimbo.
Yeah. See, I put these all in order before so I am back. Right. Okay, there we are. This is another one that kind of it's been the same the whole way through. We've polished it. We've just polished it up, we've made it shine.
Yeah, we have. This one, yeah. This didn't slip down any cracks away from us. This was just from the very beginning. But it was fun because I wanted it to be that. And you in particular had to do a bit of research. The cinematic universe of these cards is sort of steampunk adjacent Victorian.
Yeah.
And so we had to work out, did they have jock straps? And what counted as BDSM then? And the thing is, not only did they have jock straps, they invented them for their absurd penny farthing style cycling contraptions, because the streets were all still cobblestone. So it worked really, really well. The other one, which we'll get to, is chain link fences. But the things you learn putting a card deck together is like, how old are chain link fences? Where did that come from? But I'm really happy with that, because the whip is a card of pain, obviously, and repetitive action. And that's all true. And it's always, when I've read Lenormand prior to having my own deck, I don't mean every time, but if you get like, coming back to the rider as extramarital twink, if you get like the rider and the twink, like if you're a woman asking like, what's my husband doing? And you get like Crossroads rider twink, it's like, since you asked, he's at a truck stop with someone half his age. So it's been in there when it needed to be. And what I've liked about this deck is being able to, I don't like using the word queer, as you know, but like being able to queer Lenormand so that those stories are in there if they need to be. And I say story rather than meaning. So the whip card, it signifies pain and repetitive action. So it's associated work and so on. But some people, like Rihanna, like that. So
yeah, and it's another gender. It's a gender swap for the inset. So it's like, it's supposed to be Billie Eilish. Eilish. She can't do anything right now because they're all on strike. Okay, so they cannot come for us. I believe that's the law. Okay, and I am a scientist. So
that's supposed to be Billie Eilish.
Yeah, that was like it was like make it Billie Eilish, but it's kind of a boy because that's.
That was it. That was the difference, right? It's funny you mentioned on strike, because I'm opted at the time of recording this after watching the latest Tim Diller podcast. Like, we should have had Lizzo in this.
Oh, lesson
next Jack. Yeah,
and the next sec she's going to be on Ozempic. She's going to be thin, and that's how that pans out. Tim Diller is right.
So the mountain is one of the ones that didn't change much either, except, it did go through iterations from a detail perspective, but one of the things I wanted to achieve with the deck, and you see that with the house card and the rest of it, is I wanted this to be not anti-European or non-European, but I wanted it to be more global. And my influences, especially in the last few years, have been very Andean. So I wanted this to be an Andean mountain, glacial lake, and the idea of a mountain being a forbidding and a kind of negative card with European associations is still in there. We get that with the harshness of the light and the parts that are in shadow. But the Apus, the mountain spirits of the Andes, are sacred in an Andean context. So I wanted to be able to bring that in there. Same thing with the Serpent, with the Michelle Gomez card, is one of the ways, oh God, I'm going to use it again, that we are queering Lenormand
It's
is to
happening.
provide
It's
European,
happening.
yeah, is to provide non-European answers. But see, I'm using it correctly. I'm not using it the way Miley Cyrus uses it, which is for everything. I'm actually using it for twisting, right?
Yes.
And so I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with being able to bring as a, you know, someone with Apu's in my lineage to be able to bring that into the deck is very exciting for me personally. And I remember we were all still trapped in the country working on this card, and we would have some private chats because I sent you a bunch of like drone videos of places we absolutely could not get to. And there was a bit of about working on
Yeah,
this card.
right. You just wanted to feel that fresh, ice cold air. And I think about it. I do remember there was like a Yeti in there at one point. There was like some person's trying to scale the mountain. And that all kind of got taken out because we wanted to simplify. I love the horizon. I love the sort of I love the sort of the balance in this one. That was the thing that we really did think about the whole way through was like the balance of each image because they had to play with insets and they had to make sense as their own. It's another one that it's solid. It works. It's cinematic universe, and it's really it's there. This is like the logo for the cinematic, like those like Universal Studios and whatever. This is like the logo plays over this, and then we
Yeah,
like cut to again. We cut to the rider that's like sort of riding off and starting the adventure. Love it.
I agree. And I like that you mentioned the horizon because mountains are slow, and that's one of the things that the card has. And I wanted like FPV drone energy to sit in the tension of that. So we got that with it, which I'm very happy with. We're just doing it in the order that I've had them shuffled. So now we're onto the Amy Winehouse card,
Oh,
which so I was the one that fucked this up to start with conceptually because I wanted it to. But initially, I was listening to inevitably Nicki Minaj driving back from Hobart, and I'm like, let's have a pink coffin because we just moved out of
yeah.
doing the black and white and red, and I'm like, let's have like a what if Nicki Minaj has died? Like, let's have a pink coffin surrounded by the umbrellas because I always wanted this. I always wanted a Langley secret agent style
Yeah.
funeral energy to it because the coffin is obviously a death card. It's a box card. It's a burying of secrets. So it's got that Indiana Jones top men thing of like, we are just putting this away where no one will find it. And that brings like that fun spy energy into it. So I was wrong. Mercifully, I was dissuaded fairly quickly from like, you want a pink coffin. And it's because coming back to the queering, I can't believe I'm doing this, of Lenormand, there's a way of doing that wrong and suggesting a hermaphrodite rather than a man and woman card. I understand why that person suggested that because they want the deck to be more inclusive, but that's doing that wrong. And the same thing, like you can't just mess with the story of you can't make the coffin pink because it's a sad, bad card. And you need it to still be able to do that. And most of us who are on calls like pink. You can't make it like, hey, you got the coffin card. It's like, oh, you got the coffin card. So that
Yeah,
was just a silly idea that I blame Minaj.
truly, we were ahead of the Barbenheimer curve with that one. It was
Plainly.
like the
Like if we'd
CIA
done
had
that, yeah.
Coffin.
Yeah. But I'm really happy with this. This is like real graphic novel energy.
Very, very that.
Again, yeah.
I could have pushed. I remember not pushing back, but I was like, oh, I wish we didn't put the green grass. Like the grass wasn't so like verdant because that was the thing you wanted, and it totally makes sense now seeing it kind of printed because it's a very dark card and it highlight like visually very dark, and the green just highlights it, and we've still got the kind of the shape of the umbrellas kind of being like Breton. Remember that was kind of in
Yeah.
there. So there are elements from the very beginning that made it the very end and got put in the ground with the coffin cards. So it's
Yeah.
cool.
The kinetic energy in this card, like all of them, it's one of the reasons from the very beginning I thought you'd make a great co-pilot for this project is to bring a graphic novel sentimentality to Lenormand cards typically being very staid and bucolic and bourgeois, which is like it's a mid 19th century game. You're not going to get, you're not going to get Vertigo comics out of it. It's just not where it is. But you should like that. That is a way of telling that different story and bringing speed. in the right way to slow cards, like the mountain. So the wrong way of doing that would have been a landslide, right? But an FPV drone shot of the mountain brings the right kind of speed to it, I think. I hope, because it's done now. All right. Continuing our icons only insets. This is a card that, because it's early on, was it about the bouquet that we changed something at the bouquet? Was it the size? It was something like that. Because the general idea was to go Kew Gardens, and these are flowers that will heavily intoxicate you to the point of paralysis, so you can be robbed and have your kidneys taken out in places like Colombia. So again, that's a way of like queering the bouquet. The bouquet is a good card. Yeah, you got flowers, but you also get flowers sometimes when things aren't great.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
Queen of Spades.
exactly. And also it is a card for herbalism and sorcery and so on. So particularly with Tilda Bowie in the inset, we have it brings that sharpness when it needs to. And I just love the idea of a greenhouse and like spades, like the Queen of Spades belongs on the bouquet card, but to get that to work, you want that Penny Dreadful visit with Dracula
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
Gun.
yeah.
So it's actually ended up being one of my favorites in the end, because one of the things that I think didn't work to start with was overemphasizing the feeling of becoming intoxicated, and it's just there as a hint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That yeah, there was
There's
a perspective kind of thing
yeah,
that kind of was and wasn't working, and we're like, okay, let's redo this, and then that was that was the beginning of the end for the day. I think that was like let's redo this.
yeah. All right. My son Toby.
Oh, let's okay. Where are we?
Yeah,
Lucky 13.
the child.
There he is.
And again, this is another one that I think like we had to do some study on of, well, would capes have been a thing for kids? And I think capes would have
Yes,
always been
and
a thing. And like we've
yeah.
got Alec G 19th century comics to not like from, but set then that allowed for it to work. And I just wanted the joy of a kid playing on his own, because you can see little kids sort of highlight in the background. And that's what I wanted. I wanted like the energy of this card is my energy, youthfulness. But it's like inner child is experiencing the world with beginner's mind. It is joy, and just joy at like today's a day. Things are great, and I think we get that in this card. It was real fun. And we built this whole backstory that his name is Toby is where we'll go with it.
Yeah, and this was another gender swap for the inset. This was Lana Del Rey. So like it was Billie Eilish, Lana Del Rey. Who was the diamond? The It was the rapper, but he's not gender swap. So it's like, yeah, another queering, but
Post
like kind
Malone,
of
yeah, we'll get to him.
yeah,
He
that's
looks
right.
great.
He does. Yeah, this is one of those ones that I was kind of like, is it going to work? And then it does. I'm happy with it. And he's the kid's just like he's bounding forward. It's a good energy. It's a good card, even though it's unlucky for 13.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And actually, I mentioned this
This
to
is
my
another one
friend.
where it's like they are kind
Yeah.
of all the cards kind of they are not. It's not like a story like a graphic novel, but like he's playing in like the rock pool just over the edge of where like Michelle Gomez is playing, So there is like that there is like a sensibility of it all, which it's a cinematic universe, but like it's a story, but it's not.
Exactly,
It's a
exactly.
story. It's a game within a game, but it's not a maxi challenge and it's not a mini challenge. It's just everything just works so well.
I'm happy with it. And it allows you, one of the things that is so important with Lenormand readings, particularly with tableaus, is cards that are in dialogue, right? So horizontally and vertically and even diagonally. And part of the ways you do that classically is with sight lines, but motifs and so on. And we have cards we've put in dialogue that have never been in dialogue before. And it's not forcing a meaning into it. It's opening up the possibility. Like, who would have thought that the snake card, actually, this is not true. Like the snake card and the child card could be in a classic dialogue of like stepmother, right? But it's got a particular magic when they're in the same sort of scene, which is further downriver and at night to like the ring card in the house. So they're there to like invite you in if you need to. And some of the cards are in far warmer climes. And this is the book, of course. And it's a chaos magic deck to some extent. It's not, but it's by like a chaos magician. And so you will see, just as you did with the coffin, the cult leader's head has the Fortune Fool's Chaos Star on it. And this is playing with the idea of, you know, the Necronomicon and so on. And where is my must be in another room. And Jung's great big red book, right? And because I can make the case, it's more of a rant, that the red book is the Necronomicon. Like it isn't, but I can queer that angle and fucking and sell that sizzle. But this is one of those fun cards that's meta. It's on the cover of the book, of course, because it's the book card, and here's the book in it, and it's real Lex Mentalo style playing with where the author belongs in a project, so that it opens up that cinematic universe to you in this world. But it's like a definite nod to the Necronomicon and North Africa, or maybe, well, not really North Africa as much as like somewhere we would call it somewhere in like the former Islamic Empire, because it could be the Middle East, it could be Morocco. It's got that kind of, yeah, I like it. It's got that heat and dust of the Necronomicon.
Yeah, it's another one that where so a lot of times it has a good it's like very central, like the inset and the book are just like it's very like front facing, which I enjoy. And it was just a fun one to do. Like this was very this was some of these kind of when the trailer for Indiana Jones, that new one just dropped. We were like, oh, this is they've kind of been obviously looking at what we're up to and like trying to do their best to kind of
Fucking
imitate it,
hope not.
whatever.
Yeah, I fucking hope not, because that has not done well. Anyway, there's an extended picture. If we go around to the back of the book, a few Easter eggs in the cards, and I shall leave you with. But I was really happy with that. And the book card, like the book is a card of secrets, and it's a card that's special in large readings because it's where you locate things that you aren't being told. I just liked adding that extra menace to secrets. There's this book that isn't even supposed to exist, which is both the Necronomicon and the Red Book for a century, more or less than, let's say 80 years, was a secret, in the sense that Jung's descendants refused to have it published because it showed he went fucking insane, and in a spectacularly hot way. So it eventually came out. But like, so books and secrets, book of secrets. I wanted to play with that idea. And this card we'll call the World of Wonder Fish card. Um, there's no one better than for King of Diamonds than a RuPaul inspiration, given how commercially successful she's been and how brazenly so. But I wanted that. This is one of the ones where the inset matches really well with the so-called meaning of the main card, because fish is Pisces, Pisces is Jupiter, King of Diamonds, like brightness and wealth and so on. And I wanted this to be tuna, which of course is the chicken of the sea, but like is a tuna harvest is a sign of wealth. And there used to be, when there were still decent tuna in the Mediterranean, festivals in places like Venice, which is why we have the gondola and Venice in the top. It's all this kind of, this is an abundance card in the sense of wealth, 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 wealth and abundance. And again, like we had the drone with the mountain, we're doing GoPro angle here so that you can see above and below the water with a special GoPro lens. And that worked super well for me, I think. This is one of my favorites, I would say.
It's really cool. It's RuPaul is she's the merchant of Venice Beach. And it's like it's it was always it was a strong concept, and it always is one of those ones that's not really changed. It's just gotten more polished and kind of until eventually we just had to put that bitch out in the wild. As a
Oh, yeah,
solid,
yeah, yeah. All
I like
right.
looking at
Now,
there's also a sorry, go on.
no, yeah, you keep talking. I was just moving on to the next card. What did you want to say about the fish? Tell me
Very
more.
the variance in like light and dark, like visually light and dark cards is good. Like there, because we were always talking about that. Like we have so many of this color of card. We're like, this is a night card. This is a day card. It's kind of we always had it in our mind, and I think the balance overall in the deck really shows, like, it's not a goth particularly deck, but it's not also not like, a day walking drag queen kind of thing. It's like it it's I was worried about it, and then I'm like, okay, no, that's all it's all balance. There's a balance to the deck. And this is like just for me
Yeah.
because yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
And I remember last year being in Mexico and playing with that, right? Like, so I remember we got all the, at that time, iterations of the cards, and I put them all on one kind of big image to make sure it wasn't too bright or wasn't too some other color. We were more worried about it being too dark, but it never managed to get there. If we'd gone with the original, like black, white with splashes of red idea, because my first thought was when you read playing cards, the Camellia Elias way, to read like the devil, the first thing you look at on a level of gestalt is like how much red versus how much black
Yeah.
is, to see if it's broadly positive or broadly negative. And then you get into the detail. And I wanted to do that with the playing cards, well, with the Lenormand deck being inspired by the playing cards. But the trouble is some of the like black suit cards are also quite good and vice versa. So it quickly became obvious that you couldn't do that because your inset being black would clash with the main card being more red. And it was a fun idea while it lasted a week and a half, but it was the beginning of realizing like we have to be careful with tone and lightness. And speaking of lightness, these two are a double fave. But that was a good example, right? So we needed to put some London, some Europe in there. And this is Regent Street. This is the top of Regent Street, basically near Oxford Circus, which is where I used to catch my bus. That's me on the right holding a book. You can tell, first of all, that's my future wife, Eva Green, on the way to the British Library, which at the time was also the British Museum, carrying the book from the book, which is also the Red Book. And she is looking at husband number 2. This, I think, there is, and it would have been good, but there's like a version of the Lenormand that we would have done that would have been all this. Do you know what I mean? It would have been a 19th century British. We basically, if we would have got sued by the Penny Dreadful showrunners and no one else, because we just would have done it. And it would have been a good deck. But this one is definitely better. But that the man and the woman card looking like that, obviously they're supposed to go together. I think this is a real fun combination because there are only 2 genders, and that's secretly what we were trying to convey with these cards.
That's what we're unqueering a deck. No. Yeah, he's got like red and the ribbon of his hat. It's like kind of
There are 2 genders and there is no sex before marriage.
the gender does not matter. It's just how hot you are that matters, and that's truly what these two represent. How hot are we?
That's correct.
That's really Elias question.
Yeah, there is 1 gender. Yes. All right. And now, speaking of butts, kind of, the ring. And I mean, it's the ring card. It's me. This is going to be Lord of the Rings inspired. And it is Elrond's ring phrasing. But obviously we can't go with the one fucking ring for a couple of reasons. Mostly that it would be a bad card then. And the ring card is fidelity and contracts and cycles and so on. So it had to be the ring that powered Rivendell, which is why Rivendell was the way it was. The Elven rings were very good at keeping things Madonna, which is to say fresh and ageless. And that the ring does that. And it carries that cyclical idea. So it needed to be a good card. Like it needed to be, yay, it's the ring, but it also needed to be Lord of the Rings. And we have this is just near the house card. You can see the mountains are in more detail here because of the angle. And I wanted to go with like a 1980s wristwatch magazine ad energy to this card. And I think you did. I think that's exactly what happened. We got 1980s wristwatch magazine. And I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, this is like this was so, like I think I mentioned it during like the one of its many reveals during its versions. Was it felt like it was like it took me back to like a childhood like Power Ranger, like having like the little Power Ranger toy that had like like the disc, and it was very like there was something about the jewel, and it's just very satisfying to me. I love the light that it casts on the rock. It's a cool card. It's another one that has a good balance, and it's part of the story, but it's not really. It's not forcing the story. I love it. Yeah, great. This is one of the ones like in the
Yeah.
initial kind of shuffle, I was just like, oh damn, that's a good ass car.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That w like, we should talk about that because it makes me sound good for a start, but, a couple of times during the show, because on the one hand, this is what has always intrigued me about Lenormand. The cards are boring in a way that the trumps in tarot are less, but I actually think, and there's a whole chapter about this in the book, its power is in its, quotidian recognition. But consequently, like you, I would not really, I'd make sure it was a surprise for you each time we do the episode. So you didn't know what I was thinking for something that could really be boring, like a ring or a bouquet or a lily. And then it turns out to not be. And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
I was not looking forward to this card because I thought it would be boring. And now you have me drawing a 19-year-old butt or something.
100%. Like almost, I would say half the cards. I was like, oh god, I'm gonna have to draw a bunch of mice or like pigeons or well birds or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, guess we'll just have to grin and bear that one. And then they turned out to be the most fun to kind of draw to kind of create. Absolutely, that's vision for you.
Well,
Set it.
speaking of the lily, the Jennifer Coolidge card, because the project ran long enough for us to be introduced to and fall in love with White Lotus, and this is the Lotus card, sort of. Like, it's the lily, but I wanted it to be an Amazon lily. The lily is a fucking complicated card, and it doesn't make sense on the level of traditional meaning. Not only do we have another cinematic icon as the King of Spades, but it means a bunch of stuff. It means fidelity, and it means loneliness, and it means older man, like as in an adult in his 50s still, like, what was his name? Come to me in a sec. Alan something. Like a man in his 50s who never married, who's still living with his widowed mother. It's got that kind of energy to it, as well as being a card of nuns and the convent and so on. It's a mess in a way that it's the most challenging card in the Norman deck from a traditional reading. It's the card where if this comes up, you're like, oh God, what does this mean? And mostly it means, here's the trick, I think, to the lily. First of all, it's in there because of the fleur de lis, which is a card of both royal power and fidelity and so on, but also and the reason the fleur de lis is in there is because of the sacredness of the flower. So this is why it comes through with like a cacophony. But if you think of, and this is what we did with the card, if you start with retiring and awayness, so a man who still is in his 50s living with his widowed mother is obviously in trauma. Like there's something about him that he didn't go out into the world, right? But it's a retiringness, it's an awayness. And hence we went with the White Lotus kind of theme of it being, it can be a luxury retreat because there is a wealth component to the card. But that's with like the sunlight and it being on the Amazon, like that retiring awayness is where you begin with it and let it modify. It's usually the modifier, uh, but let it begin because it's a real challenging one. But also, this is the card that, because it's so challenging, I think this is the best Lily card ever done because it's definitely one people, when they create a deck, they just skip over like, oh, the lily, I don't even like seeing it in readings. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just going to draw a lily and move on. And we decided instead Amazon lily is the way to go. And I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, totally. It's like there's no more absurd deck that you can have like an embodiment of Jennifer Coolidge just sort of just lightly kind of existing in the background. um, it's cool. It was one of those ones that there was a lot of challenges of fitting everything in and like making it work. And there was that kind of the contrast between the meaning of the main card and then the inset. And it has it's a challenging card, but I think we pulled it off immaculately.
We did. And speaking of, how do I get this word, pulling things up, Rider returns in the Tower card. Now, the Tower it's not the opposite meaning to the Tarot, but the it's the meaning before the Tarot card Tower meaning comes into effect. So the Tower card is like the house of God is the destruction of the establishment. right? So the Tower card is an ending of regularity, whereas this is it in its almost full flight. But as a out and proud anarchist, if this is the Tower of the Establishment, it needed to be Gormenghast. It needed to be sclerotic, and it also needed to have the sense that it's not necessarily coming to an end like the Tower card because it's a slow card, but it needed to bring in a bit more of that ominousness. Ominousness? Is that a word? Anyway, the point being, because the Tower is not just like academia, the Tower is prison, right? So the Tower is trapped by the state. So it had to have bureaucracy and prison and so on with it. And we decided part of that story is to have the writer arriving with a message that is about to get lost in the town. So whatever they're doing on their journey, it involved delivering a message that got lost. And I like that.
I think this is maybe the most fairy tale of the cards, possibly like as the prince kind of
Mm.
arriving at the castle, and to sort of yeah, and to have like their journey kind of messed up a little. It was fun to do, and it was one of those ones that kind of never changed
No.
its tune. And I
Yeah.
think we delivered. Love it, and it's another one that we were just always happy to kind of have different colors and tones like in each card. So it was like another one that has a good offers like a good variety. And our little rider was fun to take.
Yeah. It brings a
I don't
little
know
bit
if
of June into it. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily desert planet. That's not in it, but it is desert. Because it's parched and unyielding. So bureaucracy is unyielding. That needed to be in there. This is a card created by people who don't like waiting in line at a government office. Right?
Be wary of people that do. That's all I'll say.
That's yeah, good
um,
point. All right.
yeah, and I don't know if it was the plan to have initially to have the rider as like a story. This is like the closest to a continued story that we get. And it ended up being really nice to create and sort of follow through. And again, week to week, I kind of didn't know what was going to happen. And then I was like, oh, there she is again. Lovely.
It worked really well. And we didn't find that their story would end with the sun card until
Yeah.
it happened. And we're like, oh shit. Yeah, yeah. That was really good. Amongst the most millennial or online cards in the deck is the mice, which is a card of little loss. Fine. But I wanted it to be grosser. I wanted it to be, but also a bit millennial. Like, let's have a Ratatouille reference, which we both got, although neither of us have seen the film because it turns out it's rumors. Why would we have
Ah,
seen it?
let's talk on TikTok. It's fake.
But I wanted it to have like, so typically it's mice in the grain store. So it's little losses that you don't notice. And I think there's a way of making that more gross and frankly more realistic, at least if you live on a farm, which is you wake up in the morning and realize, oh, awesome, we've had mice in the kitchen because there's like little loss, but also like, this is gross. They were just places where we make things. And I wanted that ickiness to it. And it's one of the reasons this card, which I think is actually the darkest card in the deck, needs to be because the whole fucking point of the mice card is that you don't see them. Like you don't see them. So that you have to look at it going like, is that a mouse? And I wanted that energy in the card. So we went with a story in a farmhouse kitchen, which I can relate to.
This is like one of my like I've got like a top 10 possibly, and it's up there just because I've just always thought it just works so well. And even though it was gross, like there was another the bird card also. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Even though they're generally negative cards, I'm like, yeah, this is a good phase.
Yeah, it's the right kind of negative because we'll just do the bird card now, right? Because this is something, and like I have walked out of the exact. I think it's changed now actually, but I've walked out of Westminster Station up the exact stairs out of the tube stop, heading towards the river and where Bouquet is, and been not necessarily accosted, but you get to the top of it and like the air is 20% pigeon, and I'm just trying to get through. And the birds is another one of those cards that is traditionally to do with gossip and chatter, idle chatter. And it's just bucolic, right? But especially in our extremely online world, back when we had an app called Twitter rather than X, this is the X card, which is, well, what's a like an offensive bird? It's a bird that no one wants around, but not necessarily dangerous in the sense of the cassowary, which is a very large bird in tropical Australia, will cut you open like a velociraptor and kill you. So that's not the energy of the bird card, right? The energy of the bird card is chatter, and because it's London, it brings in spies, especially at the moment, like monitoring and surveillance. With that, the bird peeking out of the card, like nosying into your fucking business, and it's just got this is the best bird card that's ever been done. That's as simple as that. It's in the sense of capturing the meaning and significance of what it's supposed to convey. There's nothing better than London pigeons in the year of our Lord 2023 to give the full gamut. Rather than two little robins building a nest, which is typically what you get, you want it to be pigeons in London up in your business.
Yeah, this is like, yeah, one of my favorites. Again, I'm just gonna say that about every card, to be honest with you. Definitely the Bouquet was when we decided to kind of upgrade the visuals. This, I think, was the first card where we started to kind of really form the cinematic universe. This was like the beginning of like really the tone of the whole deck, and I've always loved it. It's just so they're just so great. And now even like when I'm like in a bus station, I see like pigeons and I'm just like, hey friend, like they're now like little buddies because I've spent so long looking at them. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this
Well, there's so many fucking birds in this deck, right? Like it has a real Radagast energy.
yeah,
I think about that when I see pigeons, or we get storks down here, sort of. We get like an ibis, but it's called a bin pigeon, but it looks like an ibis. And I think, yeah, there's like a Radagast energy to how many fucking animals are in this goddamn deck, including.
yeah, best guy.
All right. Maybe because of where I've got my light, you can't see it, and it's exactly how I wanted it. You can see it on the card, but there's like a hint down in the bottom left. You can see the little lines there. That is the coils of a snake, because this card is caught up in the various saintly dog myths, because obviously a dog card is a card of loyalty and so on. And this card brings in like a protective component and loyalty beyond death. And doggos are famous and popular and whatever. So we had to halo the dog, and it's just got that kind of magical energy of a saint. There's a bit of X-Files kind of theme almost with the looking through the trees and the fireflies and so on. But it's a protective, loyal companion card in dark times or not. That's one of my favorites. To actually get a dog saint into my deck is an achievement.
Yeah, and the snake is very faint. It was like a last minute kind of like it was the final kind of the final kind of do over of it. I was like, I'm just gonna stick that in there because it's part of the story, and it's there for you. It's there for you to know it's
Yeah.
there. And if you know, you know. If
Yeah.
you're like a
Yeah.
casual,
Which is obviously mentioned in the book for people who buy it. This is one of those like wormholes between cards, so that Saint Guinevere, who is the main saint story that this is based upon, is killed by his owner for killing a snake. His owner goes away. The dog is protecting the baby. The snake gets in, and the dog goes crazy in the nursery, killing the snake. But then the owner comes home and finds the room ruined, and like the dog covered in blood, which is the snake's blood. And so he kills the dog, and that's how Saint Guinevere becomes a saint. So the snake is in there if it needs to be, which can give you a little wormhole or portal into the snake card if it needs to be. The way the deck is constructed is for people who know. It gives you those extra opportunities for dialogue and conversation between cards, which you must expect from an animist relational style deck. Here we go with the moon. This ended up being, at least, funnily enough, the moon is another one that doesn't convey meaning as well, traditionally speaking, in Lenormand versus Tarot, because when you see the card in the Lenormand deck, you just think reputation and move on. And I get that, because the moon, like, is reflected light. So when you understand what reputation is, it's that idea of the stuff that's going on around you reflected in you. So it's good that it's in there, but it's still the moon. Like, from an animist deck, it needs to bring in way more than that. So we went with Moon as Khonsu, so moon god, little wink to some other guy, I forget his name, who did the I wanted to say the Crowley deck. I wanted to say the thought deck. I'm pretending I don't remember Crowley's name. Keep up. And so I wanted like a moon god kind of feel. And why I wanted to go in that direction, even though it's still female, we play with gender, we're querying the deck, is San Pedro, which blooms at night, is or Washuma, which is a Peruvian entheogen that comes from a cactus, is more solar to ayahuasca's Luna. And so it has like a gentle romance, like the moon and the Washuma have a moment together in the evening. So I wanted that kind of magical component that the moon is the center of magic, right? And so it needed to be able to carry that as well as just being reputation, and it needed to have that night journey feel to it. So it's ended up being one of my favorites on the level of the kind of meanings that we've been able to put into it. That I'm really happy with. And he did have a number of nose jobs along the way. He's had some work done,
Yeah, but
bless him. He's had
the
some
man, he's very old, he's got his upkeep. This is another one, like, it's just a very as a very chill kind of bit. It's very as a relaxing to look at, which I enjoy. I also like when we get examples of colder colored cards or darker cards that have like a red, like a heart or diamond inset. I like the kind of contrast because it brings everything up together, which I love. Love it.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. On to for me, the next bird card, the stork.
Hey.
And actually, I'm going to do the stork at the same. Let me just pull the stars together. Well, because we'll talk about them for visual reasons. Stars. So what we have, we're going to talk about the bisexual icon card. But this is, of course, Göbekli Tepe and the stars card. And if you see where am I going? Here, you see Orion Belt, which is sort of referenced in Göbekli Tepe. It's more as far as Dr. Shock can tell, which I think is correct. It's when Sirius appeared above the horizon with Orion, again, is when it looks like they were timed to, from a building perspective. So there's an Orion story there, which in a real Starship's way is, of course, carried into the Stork card. Sorry, with my face, the camera keeps going after me rather than Rachel Weisz. And there we are. So we wanted it to kind of have 16, 17, a continued story, particularly as the stork is another reference in Starships, the idea that birds carry your soul from the well of souls or the underworld into this life. And the stork is like, delivering a baby and new arrivals and so on, which is great. That's what it originally means. But the card itself comes from, the stork migrates from Southern Africa to Europe. So I wanted to say that. I wanted it to have the stork in flight so that it's the migration of souls as we move through the deck. It's another one of those Starships and magic references. So tell us your thoughts. Tell us about, because you curveballed me with the Queen of Hearts, right? Because this is great. This is like the card of peak motherhood. Everyone kind of knows
Yeah.
what Queen of Hearts is. But you queered it, and not just because we picked Rachel Weisz. When you just offhandedly said, Joey, it's like, I imagine she stole this baby.
Yeah,
And it's just like,
and the story she's being presented
go on.
that's like, she's being presented this child, and there's kind of like a sinister sacrificial thing to it, but not really. In my head, this is where it was. It's my favorite inset of the insets, definitely. And she's just so beautiful. Like it's hard to make bad art when like your reference is that fucking smoking hot,
Yeah, I noticed that when I do selfies. Anyway, I thought the idea that she's thinking about stealing the baby just brings that stupid telenovela energy, like that the deck requires. Again, in that not so much game within a game, but the drama that goes on in this cinematic universe where there are spies on interdimensional gambling ships and the idea that Rachel Weisz has been handed a baby that she thinks, because there's a episode of 30 Rock where Liz Lemon does that, where she like holds a baby, someone's baby in the supermarket, and they turn around and she's back at home in her apartment and she's still got the baby. And
Yeah.
it's a story of her. Like, it's quite funny in that, yeah, real Tina Fey sense. But when you said that, I'm like, oh, that's kind of perfect. There's a, there's no improper expression of the Queen of Hearts, but one of them is too much heart. One of them is like, that's not your baby, ma'am. So like, put the baby down. And it's fun to have, just to know, like you said, for the people, for the few hundred people only, because no one gives a fuck about Oracle card decks, for the few hundred people only who will watch this video, they now have the story of Rachel Weisz stealing babies as part in Egypt as part of the Stork. I mean, where else would Rachel Weisz steal them from? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, it's a great card. It's one of the ones that the inset and the story, it all works well, and the pyramids kind of mirroring the Orion's belt. It's just it's cinematic. Wow.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Now we come to the end of Mary Louise's journey. I'm really happy with the Sun card because I wanted some of that. You can hear the Clint Mansell soundtrack here,
Yeah.
right? I, again, just going icons only. I wanted the sun to be obviously the sun, but to give it a bit of eeriness, a bit of sunlight is the best disinfectant. So often when it's in the deck, particularly when it's in relation, when in a reading in relation to something like the book, for instance, can be sudden revelation, whether you like it or not. And there's a suddenness to this card because we're not sure what Mary Louise, aka the writer, is up to there, but they're being destroyed they're being disinfected, if you will, by the sun. And I just wanted some of that Inca tie-inty eeriness to make it a bit sci-fi so that you still get the brightness of solar signification. And I like it, like the sun is an alien god. It's definitely my energy. I'm into it.
Yeah, cinematic parallels as well. Like I like that the sun and the moon both have those kind of embodiments. The inset works because it's like person on a singular mission that kind of gets to the end of it and is destroyed by that mission. I love that kind of like mindset of it. There is like there's like a weird sinister vibe to it, but also there's if you were
Well,
just seeing
because it
it.
needs to have, sometimes it needs that, right? But you still get it being the sun. And as you say, like Ace of Diamonds is maximum brightness. So you still get the traditional association, but you do allow it to, uh, if you stay out in the sun can kill you, right? Like that
Yeah.
needs to be in
Yeah,
there. If
yeah.
you stay out in the sun too long, especially if you're Scottish, which is 40 seconds, it will destroy you.
If we
Um,
had the fucking chance, that's all I'll say.
all right, here's one that I think was a bit challenging. Yeah. Here's one I think was a bit challenging. The cloud. And it's a really good idea because what's always annoyed me about the cloud is that it should be called the fog. It's supposed to be about the road forward is unclear. It's a card of lack of clarity. But unless you were flying in the 19th century, clouds don't get in your way. So we needed it to be, and then I ended up having a cloud inversion. James and I went up the mountains, and so this powerful cloud inversion and so on. So it's the cloud in the sense of a cloud inversion, and you can see the town in the distance, and the way there is not obvious. So again, I think this is the best cloud card of any Lenormand deck ever because it actually matches the correct meaning, which is you can't move forward. And including a windmill in it, one, it just looks really cool. But two, it gives the indication that there is no wind. Like this isn't going to burn off, right? The cloud inversion has settled, or the fog has settled, and you will not see. It's the magic 8 ball. Ask again later. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. As is James Bond himself in the card in the inset.
Riddled with spies, this deck is.
Well, hey, you wouldn't see them in the fog here. It's a great place to go cruising to find Daniel Craig.
Yeah. So rumor has it. Yeah, I love this card. Yes, again, this is a lot of the cards are like, I guess many decks are about like a journey, but this is like you can kind of you think of the rider from like A to Z. So yeah, like I said, many decks are about a journey, and this is like as part of like the rider's journey, like from
Yeah,
A to Z.
the boobs.
Eh,
Again, another favorite just because it's got a Chaos Star, and secrets are erotic, and uncovering of secrets is more erotic. And the key is obviously one of the special cards in big readings where it is like, this is the key to the deck, this is the key to the answer. And I just love the idea that it's in Salma Hayek's breasts because of course it would be. And there's a little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's just, yeah, we got, if we have an A, we need a T. And so this is the T to go with our A card. And I mean, we've got to have something for the straights and to some extent the lesbians, but you know, we've got to have something. Got to play to the full house. And I'm so happy with the key card because keys are phallic, obviously, but secrets and uncovering them is really erotic. And coming back to that telenovela idea, it had to be not just because Selma has beautiful breasts, but like it had to be something like that. It had to be a Latin secret.
yeah, I love the texture of the key. Like this was another one where we went through things had to be red and
Did
then
you drop out
different
again as
like
well?
eh? Is there a time lapse? A time delay? Oh, maybe. I'm going to say yes. I'll just continue. Yeah, so
No, keep going.
yeah, so I like the texture of the card, the texture of the key. I love how we finished it. You can tell it's metal. We started where it was red, but we had to kind of it was too like the color balance wasn't right. But the end result is mwah, perfect, and that's the key. I think that's yeah. Shall we do the next card?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's the card you want to motorboat, right? I just think it's so good. Yeah. So here's one that I did not expect to like. Yeah. I didn't expect to like the letter as much as I do, but it's ended up, now I'm the one saying it. It's ended up being one of my favorites. Now it's obviously got the little Chaos Star wax seal there. This is one that belongs on our cosmic paddleboat casino. But this one's come up in 2 of my 3 readings since I've been playing with the cards myself. But I really like it. I really like this exceeded my expectations. This was my version of like, well, how the fuck are we gonna make a letter as fun as we've done with the rest of them? And we did. Like it looks really good. I'm happy with it. I think because I had the lowest expectations of this card. So seeing where it ended up meant that I went on the biggest journey of surprise out of all the cards. So I'm really happy with it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very shiny and it has like there's like the metal has like a good luster. So it's very inviting. And again, it's part of the cinematic kind of universe of the paddle boat. So like different stories for different sets of cards and it's in there. And you kind of just it makes you want to like dip in and kind of pick the letter up and read what it's about.
All right, we got where am I going to go next? Post Malone.
Yes.
Another one that was for our times, right? Like we needed to make the Scythe, which is sudden endings and death and so on, a little bit more, well, year of our Lord 2022, but in this case 2023, which is to say civil unrest and so on. And the page, if you will, of diamonds, we went with Post Malone. And well, Post Malone prior to the last 20 rounds of face tats. Looks really good. And I'm really happy with this card. There's another one of those. You described it as this could be the cover of a comic, right? That
Yeah.
it's got that like this is the story of whatever's going on in this fucking town. But this is one that looks explicitly like a comic book cover.
Yeah, it's very cool. This was a fun one to make. It's very dramatic, and it kind of exists in the same, possibly the same town as the book card. Like there's that kind of African Moroccan kind of vibe to it, just as a head in the background with the architecture. Yeah, and it's one where it's one of the blessed cards where the inset and the the main image kind of they make sense. They kind of do naturally gel well together. And
So
it was
a jack of diamonds is like fast sharpness.
yeah.
So if you've got that's what a side is. So yeah, exactly. And that was really fun for me being able to do that for the book. Seeing everyone says when you do a Lenormand, like the insets don't match at all. First of all, that's lazy. I'm going to make them match. And second of all, a lot of them actually do. Yeah. This one kind of doesn't, having just said all of that. But as we move to, I mean, we'll say this all the time in other, but this, we got secrets in here. So that's Rory and Lorelei. You can't tell, you can't even really tell that there's people there. So I'm just going to let you know, but right there sitting in the gazebo, Rory and Lorelei enjoying hochos in, this isn't quite Stars Hollow. This is actually Paris, but that's the general idea. The garden card is about that 19th century urban idea of a garden as the Tuileries or somewhere where you do a passeggiata and be seen by townspeople. So it's like, it's a very social card. And we just wanted the cuteness of Gilmore Girls put in there somewhere. I love the lights, which again, we had to make sure existed in the cinematic universe, which is to say more or less the Victorian era. And they did. So, you know, that's not a
Yeah.
reason to come at us, but I love this.
Right.
This one didn't change much from conception, but it was certainly one that benefited from your repeated returns for further elaboration.
Yeah, and it's got like it's got the little characters are like there's the dog, there's the couple, there's the child. So like I like the guest appearances. This is like an establishing shot for like the story of Stars Hollow in a Lenormand universe.
Well, I've got to watch something.
Yeah, true.
All right. So, the tree. Ah. So the tree is actually my favorite card in a Lenormand. And we went with, well, it's the Seba or it can be the cat's claw vine, but this is the tree of life for the Mayans. It's a tree of health, but it's also a tree of slowness and so on. So we have the Mayan ruins in the background. We have the red, which is one of the reasons like the Seba and the Kuma Seba, which is a different tree, is so sacred from a healing perspective because it has the red of blood to go with it. And I like the ruins in the background to show the inevitability or the fact that nothing, which is true, nature finds a way, but nature wins in the end. And there's like the inevitability of slow change and strength and stalwartness that comes with it. The tree card for me was actually the longest chapter in the book of card descriptions because this has to be the tree of life. This has to be health. This has to be the movement of time. This has to be all kinds of stuff. And consequently, the actual image itself needed to be. And I think we got there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I like the one of my favorite details from it was the kids playing in the shadow of the tree, sort of. And you were always very specific, and that the tree couldn't look sclerotic, so it had to be like vibrant and vital
Yeah.
because it's like a health card. It's beautifully realized, if I do say so myself. Love it. And as another one where blessedly the inset and the main image kind of there wasn't like an issue of mm, doing mental gymnastics going to make that work. It just does work. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it.
Uh, Now, here's probably where we realized, admittedly, it's card two, where the idea wasn't necessarily going to work of going like black and splashes. No, it was after this was the first one that got close to being realized in the monochrome plus red. And then we decided, well, maybe we'll have a bit of color. And so it was monochrome plus red plus the emerald green of the clover. And then we're like, let's just give this up, right? The
Yeah,
original
fuck
idea
it.
is a fucking leotard and a wig, and we need to elevate to fucking drag race level drag.
Yeah, I think it was gold at one point as well. Like
Yeah.
I've got a few copies of like a gold version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the beginning of kind of let's just go all in on this and just do the damn thing. I love it.
It's
It's very kind of it's very dapper, and obviously it's that kind of there is like a Bond kind of suaveness that sort of carries through the deck. You could almost hear Tina Turner, crooning in the background from beyond the grave.
she just went to live in this cinematic universe. She didn't actually
Of
die.
course. And may she
I
prosper.
Yeah. So like the clover card is obviously luck, but it's also practical enchantment. So it's talismans and it's knowing which plant is used for what. So rosemary for ghosts and what have you. It's the Lenormand deck being bourgeois, female, 19th century has the language of flowers and so on. And the language of flowers is the genteel survival of sorcery. And so we needed to make that a little bit less genteel or a little bit more available. And so the card needs to be a talisman as well as Clover, which we get to. And this guy is not even a human, and he is on a casino boat, a paddle boat casino, which you actually never see because I'm on it right now. No, it's because it didn't fit anywhere else in the deck. But that was that. There's a dimensional traveling paddle boat casino, and he is winning using his magic there. And then he gets a letter, probably delivered by Mary Louise. So that's where these cards kind of come in together. The Clover is set on a paddleboat casino. If you ever need that in readings, which admittedly is unlikely, but it's there if you need it.
Well, you know, listen, who knows? With UFOs now, anything can happen.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's very true.
the story of the ship card wasn't quite right for like I remember having that card
Yeah.
like it wasn't quite right for the pat like the eye, but we had yeah, it was there's the texture of an idea, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, so the ship card can't be a paddle boat because the ship is about long distance travel and you
Yeah.
can't get very far in a paddle boat. So it was never going to be that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, you know, it doesn't need to be in there. It's there described, right? This is the thing, particularly with graphic novel inspired art. It's very often, this is how I'm getting out of this. It's very often the stuff you don't reveal rather than the stuff you do that tells the full story. This one is the Buffy card in its own way, right? Like we wanted a shamaness because again, there is only 2/1 genders, but no, it was more. The bear is the card of ferocious, in a mama bear sense, it's a card of ferociousness and protectiveness, particularly in that female sense. It can also be your boss at work. To some extent, it's a complex card, but in many ways, it's not. It's actually a dangerous intransigence and the risk of consequences. So if you try to hurt someone's kid, you're going to get the mother bear. If you come into work late, you're going to get the boss bear. I'm going to make a gay joke, or I'm just going to imply a gay joke about getting bears. I did actually think about going in that direction, but I'm like, no, that's too on the nose, even for this, like, even for the butt deck, that's too on the nose. Because again, you it is a more female than male card when it needs to be. Like it's literally a mother bear thing. But it's also there's something I've been long interested in for several decades, which is amazing because I'm still 27, which is the same age I was when I began the deck a couple of years ago. The reason the bear is such a powerful shamanic animal is that it hibernates so that it goes into the spirit world, but it also stands up like a human. So it's a shapeshifter. So it's a shapeshifter that moves into the spirit world. Consequently, we needed a shaman, and it's a Siberian female shaman. And you can kind of see there, she's got a summoning circle. And what she's done is summoned a bear spirit to break through something that definitely existed in the hypothetical Victorian times, which is a chain link fence, to wreak havoc on the emerging industries that are somewhere in Siberia. So it's the card of consequences and vengeance. But for me, especially, I couldn't do a bear card without it being somehow shamanic. And consequently, it is that. And I like that it's like Buffy or Skinny Willow or something. It's got a girl power, a pre-girl boss girl power magic, which I'm
Yeah.
really happy with how all that happened.
Yeah, we got she's painted like a paw print in our little summoning circle, and it's like it's a cool. This is like another one that's like a comic. This is like a graphic novel cover. Love it. Love also that there's the good witch card and then the bad witch card, which is the serpent. So it's like
Hey.
we've kind of balanced things out throughout the deck with kind of, and I'm going to say completely intentionally. That totally was what we meant to do. But that's kind of how it's panned out, which I love.
Uh, this is, I think this is the best box card as well, for the same reason that we've let the traditional meaning flower to its fullest possible expression, which is the fox in the henhouse. So the fox is the card of cunning and liars and like deft moving and so on. But there's an extra energy to a fox. archetypally, where it's not just cunning, it's a trickster cunning of like letting you know that it's at some stage during its scam that it has outsmarted you. And that's the energy we want from this. It's like this fox, she's gonna text you from inside your hen house, right? She's got like you're sitting in the house and she's like sending you a selfie, like fox in the hen house, but like I'm letting you know it. And hence the eye patch just gives it a little bit more Kill Bill, a little bit more Captain Jack, real kind of fun, smiling energy to it. Which, yeah, again, I think this is we let the fox archetype into its natural fullest expression, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah. That's what you said, the ship was like your car, like the card you look out for, and then like the fox is always the
Yeah.
one I look out for. So it was like, I know we had that kind of, it's the trickster, but it's also like a UFO abduction thing. Like, so
Yeah.
it's like that, like Close Encounters. It's a very layered kind of, it was a layered experience making it. And it's kind of ended up being like this fun, layered. I love it. Love it. Golden eye.
Yeah.
I just love it.
So when you look at that UFO light, which we have in the Clover card we just looked at, but also the dog card, because dog and fox are in their own kind of canine dialogue, right? So you have the villainess and you have the protector in the dog, and there is that trickster UFO component. So that light is another one of those meaning portals to have those cards be in dialogue if and when you need them to be. So yeah, we did really good. And actually we've ended
I
up
mean,
with 35 and 36, strangely, as the last two, which I just want to put them together because like the one of the best cards in the deck is the anchor, and one of the worst cards, second worst card, is the cross. Now, when this was a very boring game called the Game of Hope, which is sort of like the game of life. It was just dice that you rolled and moved along, whatever. You wanted to get on 35. So you wanted, like, the anchor is like your ship is coming. You didn't want the cross, which to some extent means death, but it's also like cross to bear. So much like if you remember playing the game of life in the 80s, and I certainly don't, you could overshoot the good end card. And in a game of hope, it was sort of the same, which is why the last card in the deck is one of the worst, and the second last is one of the best. And because this is the ultimate fulfillment, you'll see a few things in this card. Obviously, the fish is the tuna, but you will also see, hang on, let me just angle it up so you get the light in this room. The Olmec head things, like the treasure that ends up in the house card is here because we wanted it to be Atlantis as well as ship coming into the harbor, because it's like the end of multiple journeys in a multidimensional sense. It's discovery, is inheritance in the sense of Atlantis is our inheritance. It's stitching together all the good stuff into the card with like, we've made it. Like Mary Louise on the ship. Yes, she got evaporated by the sun, but the ship ends up in this Caribbean harbor. We did the work on these two cards
Atlantis,
whilst
and
I was
I did
actually
well,
in
I
the
did these two
Yucatan,
cards.
right? And like, so we'll get to RuPaul again, but we'll get to like that one in a second. But that was one of the weird ways the actual work of putting this together over 18 months mapped to reality was the being useful places to talk about certain things. I don't know your thoughts on the anchor card now that she exists.
Love it. Love the contrast of the two is also great. But just in terms of like color and stuff, there is a lot of stitch. I like that speaking of stitch and ideas, and we got like the one final appearance of the Chaos Star, that not a Chaos Magic deck, but it's in there. We got the tentacle, like, which is sort of, it appears in like the back of the card, and the Kraken and the above the inset. So there are a lot of, it's really thick, with like thick and juicy with elements, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's obviously one of the cards you want to see in a reading. And there's something thirst quenching, maybe, but there's something really opulent about the card when you get it. There's like a relaxing, cooling pleasantness to this card, much like the fish card and even the house card, that is correct. Like they're supposed to make you feel like that. And I'm
Yeah.
really happy with it. Yeah, really happy.
And even though there's like those sharks in the distance, the silhouettes of them, like that's far away. Your problems are kind
Yeah.
of are behind you. The danger,
Yeah,
from
or you are simply compartmentalizing them. Like, nope, I choose to completely ignore them. That's interesting. All right, lucky last. This was a super synchronistic one in a lot of ways. The background is inspired by the ceiling of Merida Cathedral, which is I wasn't in the cathedral exactly, but I was in Merida doing this card, and I got really sick. I was throwing cards. The story's in the book. I was throwing cards, obviously not these, but another Lenormand deck, and it was something like Ring Garden Dog or Dog Ring Garden, and ordinarily that would have been like be loyal or connect out in public. But where I was staying had a literal walled garden with a little pool in the middle of it, which looked
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
like
that's
the
great.
garden in the card. And it was if you once you understand it, that's what I was doing the reading in that garden. And it's a story of staying loyal to the garden, as in like, what should I do? I was behind on the book and whatever. And it was, what should I do today from a healing perspective? And the answer was stay loyal to the garden, right? Like just don't go out and rest. And so that was all the things that is contained within the cross card. And I wanted it to be, because it's the card of hardship, but it is also a religious card in the sense that you might less likely these days join a religious order or fall afoul of the church. I don't know. And because it was Latin America and the 5 centuries of theft that the church embarked upon, I wanted it to have that evil opulence. And so it does. It carries like heaviness, effort, harsh consequences, but it's also just like a really metal card. And the green of the like the eerie unhealth allows it to not be, this is not a pleasant card. This is a card of being forced into doing stuff, being cross to bear, hardship, and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a sclerotic nature we did not want in the tree, and it's RuPaul at the Met Gala, so that's just for reference.
Which reminds me, did we actually do the Crossroad? Having just
Well, we
said that, or
definitely
did we
will.
say no? Because this one, I mean, I love it, but I have mixed feelings about it because the 36 people who bought the premium packs that includes the training selected this, and I understand why. It's not that it's bad as the poster, and I wanted a completely different choice for the poster. So this is in many respects the essential or defining image for the Fortune's Fools, which is the Crossroad. And we've got a bunch of stuff that came in and out because plainly that is a Robert Johnson style blues performer going to the crossroads to do a deal with the devil. We had the devil coming out of the tree, standing behind the tree, and so on. We just kept it with Ghost Tree because, like, it's a dark card and you're not necessarily going to see all that kind of stuff. Got a full moon happening. And what I liked about it being at night and not seeing all the directions possible is that's the point of a crossroad. You're at a moment where you don't know where to go. And yeah, what do you think? And then you can talk to us about the final icon in the inset.
Yeah, like this one always had a kind of painterly, like you could put that in like an old frame, and you would think, oh, that's like, that is a painting from like the late 19th century. I love, I say this as if I didn't do it myself. I love the moon kind of having the same color as the actual crossroads. I love the Robert Johnson stuff. It always kind of, I think initially we had some trouble with the perspective, but it all got quickly hashed out. But it's always, once we got to like a finish level, it's always been, I think it's one of the cards that once we got to it, it's not had much extra done to it. I've maybe had to
Yeah.
tweak things. But it's always been like a favorite. I can understand why the team picked it. Because it's been, until I kind of got to the end of the deck and at the end of like polishing everything up, I think it was my favorite card for a long time. And Lucy Liu there as the Queen of Diamonds as inspired,
Yeah.
perfect, no notes, just, I mean, I like,
That's
fine,
exactly. Yeah.
like, perfect.
Do you have a favorite now?
Um,
Because we've said about 3 or 4 of them were favorites. As we get to the end, do you have a favorite?
So I don't think I think I'm not allowed to as the as the
Yeah.
answer. I do genuinely think there's not one card that even the house, there's not one card that I don't love. Very proud of the work we've done, very proud of the outcome, very proud of, James's kind of polish of, like, producing the box and the book. So, yeah, I think it would rob the deck to pick one, although just, the fox, just that's just yeah.
See, I was gonna make that joke too. It's like, yes, I agree with everything you said, that's up. But,
Oh, yeah, did we do the serpent? I don't think we got the serpent card
you know
either.
what? Maybe we did. I don't know. I was trying to get them in. So it was never going to be anything other than an ayahuasca snake on the banks of the Ucayali, and you can see her. And you actually managed to get the shamanic implements correct without any notes on that. When it started coming back, I'm like, that's actually right. Those are the things that are supposed to
Yeah,
be there. And this is a powerful reframe of the snake, which it still is being like the other woman, but coming from a biblically inspired tradition in Europe, it is of course like Eve and the serpent. It's women being untrustworthy. So there's a misogyny in the card that needs navigating. And one of the ways to navigate that is rather than saying women are untrustworthy, to say women are untrustworthy. Like put some stank on it, like and some power around it, which is like, yeah, because they're up to mischief, not like because they're inherently flawed. And
yeah,
consequently, we needed to go with, yes, it needed to talk about the snake is the other woman and so on. But obviously the serpent being ayahuasca and Sachamama and the rainbow serpent and a powerful transformative archetype of wisdom and change around the planet. It needed to be that and also a bad bitch. So we got Michelle Gomez and Nicki Minaj on the one card. And that's just crazy to think about.
yeah. This is very "I am women, hear me roar" or "hear me hiss." Like, it's very chill. I think the thing with the actual serpent was we started, and once we started to kind of upgrade the cards and make them more kind of hyper real, this one didn't. So I started to, and I was like, it doesn't really look quite right as a real snake, or as like it has to have that kind of cartoony look. And it's like in the midst of transport, like it's kind of like it's scale like kind of shimmer in a way to kind of reveal the people print and stuff. So
Yeah.
it was one of those ones where I was like, I don't know if this works right until the very end. And I was like, no, this works. This is great.
No, it's like, and we got Michelle Gomez literally on her way to steal your man. Like the energy is really celebratory, and it can still be, which it needs to be, right? Like it can still be the other woman. Like if you're, because I swear to God, 25% of professional readings are in that category. Is he seeing someone else? So it still needs to do that, but it also, Camellia would kill me. She won't get this far into the video. Camellia would kill me if I said this. But if you are the other woman, this might be your signifier. Like in theory, it shouldn't be. In theory, you should always be the woman card. But there are times, particularly if you're throwing some black magic at his wife, this might be you. And in which case you do need to think about the choices you're making. But from a card reading perspective, that might be you. And I just loved, it was one of the alchemical transformational moments for me in embarking on this project, was being able to, this makes it sound like I'm the savior for women. I don't mean it like that. I mean, I was actually able to elevate something that's very important to me, which is the serpent as an ally and an archetype, and put it where it needs to be. Now, most professional readers, at least in the West, with Lenormand, and there aren't that many, I guess, but Camellia would be one, know that it has a better, it is more nuanced than just being the other woman. But I wanted that to be centered. I wanted that to be literally in entheogenic lights. So in that sense, I mean, I'm joking. I don't have a favorite card either. It's just flicking through that. I'm like, the letter is actually one of them. The heart, like I'm going through thinking like, can I make a decision? No, I can't. I wanted to joke and say, you know, coming from behind phrasing, the cloud is one of my favorites. Now now that I see it in print, it looks really good. So I agree. I don't think it is right for us to choose between our children. It's definitely not the child.
Their job to prove themselves. Okay, now that's part. Like they
Correct.
have to go out and do the work.
Correct. Yeah. Well, yeah, we come to it at last. Yeah. end of the project, although the playing cards and everything are still being sent out, as are the posters and so on. But officially, the beautiful boxes, the beautiful Apple style fortune telling bombs are out, winging their way across the world into people's hands. And we did it. Well done.
We got a Joe. I have a
Yeah, I
feeling.
was gonna say.
I have a feeling that the playing card deck is going to be equally as satisfying. Like, so I'm excited about that. It has the same bat as the main deck, but I'm excited just to see. I'm excited to see the insets like at full scale.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun to play with that. And I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever, I don't think I've ever fortune told with a playing card deck personally. So I'm excited to kind of get to work on that one.
Yeah. 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 Okay, cool. No, I think that'll be fun. And I'm so just happy that we got a full playing card deck into the world, because it's another one of those dimension foldings of getting story of the cards out into the world, back into the story of the cards, which is
Yeah.
one of the things that a long project and a long ritual, a ceremony like this can do. I've got a couple of hundred decks of different things right now, and I've been reading cards for 20 years, which is amazing because I'm 27, and teaching tarot and so on. And these are alive. I'm very happy. It's a milestone for like a magical career. I mentioned Crowley before, like he had one, but I was thinking more like Alberto Violdo, who's my shamanic healing teacher, has an oracle deck out. It's a thing that I'm happy I've done. It is a one ring, which is probably why it couldn't be in there. Like it's pouring everything that I have to share about fortune telling into the book and the deck, and the experience of it has been very satisfied. We've done well, I think.
And we got it out in half the time that it took Crowley to get his out. So there you go.
This is true. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. But when I think about the original delivery date was the end of last year, and it's still just gone August, and everything isn't like my 3-week bathroom job isn't done yet, and it's been 6 months. It's like, this is just, well, this is I'm going to close where I began by thanking James, because I could not have done it. I just would have refunded people or something at some point, because it, it was so difficult. You cannot imagine. And people think they can. It's like, oh, I've had something printed in China before. It's like, no, these are multiple pieces moving all over the world. There are people who bought this who live in Gran Canaria and Guernsey, and like addresses that China's like, this is a fake country. What are you talking? There's just, and not being able to, you cannot imagine the complexity that he's gone through. Part of the ceremony has been getting this into the fucking world. Like like I said, there are 3 people in this marriage, right? He's honestly a third of the work of being able to get this out there. And I'm so like
And
grateful.
uh,
Yeah.
he's the doula in this like
Yeah.
situation. Because that's the most important part as well. Like, because the baby doesn't come out unless it doesn't have guidance.
Yeah.
I've looked before, like, so obviously again only as a 27-year-old, about 24, I forget, who knows. Like in my sort of time as an artist, I've definitely looked at like making a tarot deck or whatever by myself, and literally got to look at the research and the kind of the the part where you have to actually get it produced and get it sent out. And I was just like, oh no, that's hurting my teeth. Like I can't think about that. That's insane. It's logistics as its own witchcraft way.
So like you can do it if you go to makeplayingcards.com and get them to sort it all out. But if you want this, right? If you want it to look like, which I did, otherwise what's the fucking point? If you wanted it to look like what we got, you can't do that except by hand, right? Except by hand. And yeah, so I'm just so grateful that it is what it is. And yeah, I'm really excited because we couriered ours, because there's got to be some perks to being extra special guest judges. So we'll get ours about a week or so before they start showing up in areas that aren't Gran Canaria and Guernsey, because they might take a little bit longer. But from now, when this video is out, people are going to start getting them, and yeah, then the fun begins. So thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for being Michelle to my Rue.
It was an honor and a pleasure and a laugh.
That's what
So there.
yeah, it was. Well, I mean, maybe finish with that. Like, I began the project wanting it to be a contribution to the field. So I wanted it to be a small project for people who wanted to come along. And it definitely was that. Like, it really was. It felt like a small crew doing what needed to be done, and it was life transformative for me. Like, going through a life-threatening health crisis, literally, while making this, and coming out the end of both of them praising. So yeah, thanks to everyone who played along, because the only people who've got this far in this video are the ones who have definitely played along to the very end. Really powerful stuff. I'm actually proud, uncomplicatedly proud of how we ended up.
Yes, absolutely. That's yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's it. And it's dog
All right.
eye almost.
Almost. Yeah. We'll probably do something with champagne at the end of everything, right? Like at the end of the course and the poster and so on.
Like
That
I'm one against
we should do something with champagne with cyanide in it. But God. All right. Well, until then, sir, thank you very much.
Ciao.